The new Oracle Mark IIIs are the most refined version of the Oracles to date. I would consider these as an all-rounder that's slightly airy, but still very smooth and balanced. The bass texture on the Mark IIIs especially is a noticeable upgrade. The original Oracles just has no bass, it's a bit weak, it's not that powerful, and just to put it into perspective, it has less bass than Harman 2019. So that's when you know it's not a bass set. Whereas the Mark IIs had more bass than the Mark Is, it was a lot more fun in the low end with pretty decent impact as well. But when you compare it to the Mark IIs, the Mark II's bass just feels less resolving. There's less smaller nuances, and the texture isn't as good. It's not as tight and tactile as the Mark IIIs, and feels a little bit boomier and not as well controlled, which makes sense because the Mark IIIs do have an extra DD plus the new isobaric design chamber as well. So overall, it's just like hands down a better version of the Mark IIs when it comes to the low end. Mid-range wise, in terms of overall balance, layering, and separation, the Mark IIIs are overall a small bump over the others. No frequency gets in the way of the other ones. It's pretty well balanced. The treble, the mids, the bass are all pretty well spread out and layered. Compared to the Mark IIs, the Mark IIIs vocals are more powerful, they're more forward, they're fuller, and not thin and wispy sounding like the Mark IIs. The issue with the Mark II was that the vocals was just too bright, it was just too airy, and didn't have enough no-way, which made the vocals floaty, weak, kind of thin sounding, and just pretty unnatural in general. The Mark III fixes the timbre and no-way issue on the Mark IIs while maintaining enough air and detail in the end notes of the vocals. So in my opinion, in terms of both the low end as well as the mid-range, the Mark III is just a direct upgrade to the Mark II. However, versus the original Oracles, I do still prefer the vocals better on the OG Oracles. Compared to the OGs, the Mark IIIs are more laid back, it's more airy, and you can hear the smaller details in the end notes better. It's still fairly natural, but it's just not as fully complete and extended as the original, because the original does have the extra 3K bump, which does help the vocals open up more and just feels more forward, feels cleaner without any of the extra air and low end. There's just less of it, so there's more emphasis in the mid-range and the vocals. So to me, the OG is just still the most natural sounding out of the three. It's a very pure and sweet vocal set is how I would describe it. It's kind of like the Spring Rain, very clean and very clear. The OG Oracle is also the smoothest and scales the best in my opinion, because there's just less low end, there's less treble, which makes it less fatiguing, and you can crank it up more. It's a bit more immersive, and it's just more special to me in that regards. The OGs aren't as detailed and resolving or exciting as the other two, but the timbre and the vocals are my favorite out of the three iterations, and it's still a phenomenal vocal set even till this date. So if you want vocals, go still get the original Oracles. Treble wise though, if we're strictly talking about refinement plus the detail together, the Mark III is the best out of the three. It strikes the best balance between smoothness and also airy and detail and nuance to the extension. The Mark IIs on the other hand simply just it has too much treble, it's too bright, it scales really bad. I can't really listen to it past 65 dBs, and the timbre again is wispy, it's unnatural, and overall it's just not as good as the Mark IIIs in the treble. The only instances where I can see someone taking the Mark IIs over the Mark IIIs is either number one, they have some sort of hearing loss in the treble region and they just need more treble, right? So in that case, they would get the Mark IIs. Or number two, they're a treble head, they want more treble, then in that case you would get the Mark IIs. But for everyone else, get the Mark IIIs. Now versus some other stuff like the MK5 EST 7th edition, I know you guys have been asking for this review. First, I don't have any more. Number two, it's a bit boring. But that aside, these two are actually fairly similar in the overall tuning. They're both balanced, they're both well layered, and they're both laid back and have that open sense of separation and presentation to the stage. However, the main difference is that the Oracle Mark IIIs has just better bass, it's more textured, it hits harder, it's more tactile, and my unit has just more low end in general versus the MK5, which was just too neutral and too vanilla. Because the main nitpick I had with the MK5 7 was that it had no bass. It wasn't very engaging. It was it was clean, it was neutral, it was monitor right? But once you put that up against an IEM that has good bass implementation and an extra DD on top of that, the Oracle Mark IIIs is just a tier above the MK5 7s in that regard when it comes to the low end. Overall, it's just more engaging on both ends without sacrificing the mid-range, and it's just better in my opinion. If you were gonna get the MK5 EST, I would honestly just get the Oracle Mark IIIs. It's just that but better. Now compared to the Hype 4, the Oracle Mark III is a more laid back, more detailed version of it with less emphasis in the low end and just like the bass in general. The attack in the low end is slightly tighter and sharper on the Mark IIIs. It's overall just like cleaner and more well controlled in terms of the low end, but it's not as impactful, immersive, not as, you know, like full and big sounding as the Hype 4s, where the Hype 4s have more emphasis again in the low end, and it makes that everything just like more forward. Even the vocals, the Hype 4s feel like a bit more forward, even though it's not as airy and detailed, and in that sense it's not as resolving, it's not as airy, and it's not as well separated when you compare it to the Mark IIIs. So from a technical perspective, the Mark III is a bump over the Hype 4s, but tuning wise, I do still prefer the Hype 4s more. It just sounds more engaging, it's more fun, and it's just a more unique listening session versus something, you know, that just like balance and another all-rounder pretty much. On the other hand, the Hype 10s has the same technical like level as the Oracle Mark IIIs, but it's just like fuller and more impactful in the low end, and the vocals are a little bit more forward, they're more detailed, a little bit sharper in the resolution, like just a little bit, and they feel more powerful. You hear like just overall you hear the low end better, and also it's also more grounded in the no way and just feels fuller. Compared to the Hype 10s, the Mark III feels like lighter, it feels airier, it feels more laid back, it feels more chill and smoother actually, whereas the Hype 10 is just like more dynamics, more textured, and a little bit sharper in the imaging, and the engagement is much better on the Hype 10s. It's basically the Hype 4s, but with more resolution is what the Hype 10 is. So it really depends on what type of sound you're looking for. If you just want to like chill and just lay back, have a balanced listening session, then, you know, go for the Oracle Mark IIIs. It's also cheaper. But if you want like a more dynamic sounding set that's as resolving as the Oracle Mark IIIs, if not a little bit more resolving, then, you know, I would go for the Hype 10s. But if you can stretch $100 more, the MONARCH Mark IIIs are my favorite when it comes to like just being an all-rounder. The vocals are more detailed than the Oracle Mark IIIs, they pop out more, and the sound is overall just more dynamic while having like the air and smoothness from the Oracle Mark IIIs. So it's kind of like the Hype 10, but with more air and a little bit smoother, but with all like the dynamics on top. However, the actual direct upgrade to the Oracle Mark IIIs would be the Prestige LTD actually. They're very airy, you know, they're laid back in the vocals, similar like the Oracle Mark IIIs, but they just have more detail, better layering, and a bigger sense of space. The funny thing is, the LTD doesn't use like the same isobaric like dynamic driver setup as like the cheaper Hype series or even like the Oracle Mark IIIs. So in terms of like the low end, the Oracle Mark IIIs is actually has better tactility and like texture when it comes to the bass. So kind of like a weird case. But overall, if you're looking for something like more unique, more detailed, more spacious, like you don't care about the low end, go for the Prestige LTD. But if you want like more low end, but you still want something airy, and you don't want to spend like $1,300, in that sense, go for the Oracle Mark IIIs. It's the much better value. I wouldn't say it's anything unique. It's another like balanced all-rounder, but it is a much needed update over the Mark IIs, which in my opinion was not that great. You know, like some people liked it, but it was just too sharp and energetic for me. So yeah, Oracle Mark IIIs. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see everyone in the next one. Shout out to Jeff Young, Rorax Cat, Dom Q, Star Buccaneers, Disc Scaldist, B Urak, Mystic Spoon Attack, Oh Really, Walker Standard, User, Ernest, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Patrick, Belcel Kel, Rosar the Kelf, Paulie J, Mr. Gorillas, Anto Risto, Gis Seng Young, Tamat Pa Franchet, Ed Dunlap, Christopher Jackson, Name, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, 777ZK, Asher, and Ben Thompson. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I'll see everyone in the next one.